Hello and welcome to Hear Me Overanalyze. This is me obsessing and analyzing Yellowjackets Season 2, Episode 9, Part 2. My video editing software made me break this into 2 parts. So if you're looking for Part 2, here it is. And have fun. She's like this because of us. And I gotta tell you guys, this is pretty frustrating. Because first of all, we know that Lottie has struggled with delusions and visions since she was a little kid. I have to assume that adult Van knows this, but I suppose it's possible she doesn't. Second of all, even if Lottie is experiencing delusions because of what the other girls did during their 19 months in the wilderness, that does not mean psychiatric intervention can't help. Yes, I'm sure psychiatry and therapy in general will be so much better in the future. But even still today, people work on past traumas and learn to cope within the confines of society. Van very much feels like an enabler in this moment, which is really sort of complex because at other times we see her basically being a follower of Lottie's, but like in a brutal, ruthless way. Personally, I don't often associate enabling behavior with ruthlessness, so I just find that series of characteristics fascinating. It's just something I don't see often. And then Lottie says, "Everyone listen, what do we hear?" And the lack of response from the women really shows how far removed Lottie is from reality in this moment. And this is where it starts to get sad for Lottie. We jump back to 1996, and this is where the title of the episode comes from, and it is glorious. When I saw the title of the episode, Storytelling, I was a little bummed out at first. I thought it was kind of a lame title, and after the episode, I completely love it. Obviously, as someone who becomes obsessed with stories, this is my niche. This really is my wheelhouse. When Lottie comes down from the attic, everyone hugs her and Lottie looks horrified. This very much reminds me of the scenes where someone is actually dead or near death and they're having visions like Jackie and the hot cocoa and everyone welcoming her. It was just like too smiley, that kind of like shine on it too. It very much felt like that to me, but there's no indication that this next part in 1996 is imaginary. So while it harkens back to that, it does seem to be reality. They're sitting around the fire and the girls ask Van to tell them a story. Some suggestions are thrown around, and we could deep dive into those titles and explain why they're relevant, but I think this next part is just so wonderful. I want to talk about it instead. Van says, "What about something you haven't heard before?" and proceeds to tell them the story of the wilderness. While we hear Van telling this story, we see a-hole Coach Ben stealing the teens' matches. So my fear is that some people only focused on what they saw and kind of ignored what Van was telling in this story, because I know that maybe it's because I am so incredibly angry with Coach Ben and I just get irrationally angry every time he's on the screen, especially when he's stealing something so vital from the teenagers. But I digress. I'm going to try to get through the Coach Ben stuff quickly. The implication with him stealing the matches is that he's so inept at keeping himself alive that he can't even start that fire from earlier. We know what he does with at least a few of the matches later on. And I'm going to stop talking about him because he's the worst. So I want to focus on Van's story. She continues this personification of the wilderness. She says, it was beautiful and full of life, but it was also lonely and violent and misunderstood. So one day, the wilderness built a house. It waited. Summers came, winters came, and then Lottie interrupts her. And I'll get to that and I'll analyze that. But first, let's analyze or overanalyze this little bit of story that we get from Van because I'm obsessed. Van has just described stereotypical, and I'm going to say stereotypical. We are dealing with stereotypes for this next little bit, so bear with me, everybody. Van has just described teenage girls, or at least these teenage girls, and a lot of teenage girls. So let's go through it. Beautiful and full of life. Teens, early 20s are often described as the prime of life. Standards of beauty are literally formed around teenagers and young adults, specifically girls. We know the fashion industry is primarily female, for better or worse. It focuses on women. Okay, so beautiful and full of life. They were. Think of the girls pre-plane crash, beautiful and full of life. Lonely and violent and misunderstood. This also describes stereotypically teenage girls. Okay? Bear with me. So many teenagers emotionally are lonely, violent, maybe not physically, but sometimes also physically, and misunderstood. This is the nail in the coffin for me around whether Lottie's delusions are real or not. The wilderness is the teenagers, and there is no mysticism here. There's a real possibility that this isn't the first time horrible things have happened in this particular wilderness. But at least for right now, with these people, they are that personified wilderness. It's significant that Lottie interrupts this story. I don't think that she interrupted it on purpose because it is going against her version of reality. I don't think she did it on purpose. But I do think that the writers are pointing to the fact that Lottie's subconscious cannot bear this reality right now. So she interrupts it with her own reality, which I will explain. Okay, so Lottie interrupts and says, I never wanted to be in charge. It chose me. I think because I was the only one who knew how to listen, but I can't hear it anymore. I think that's because it doesn't need me anymore. You all learned how to hear it, to feel it. Maybe what it wants for us now is a leader who can help us survive the rest of the time we're out here. And I cut a little bit out. The wilderness chose who fed us. It's already chosen who should lead us. So we immediately have Lottie moving away from the brutal reality and personifying the wilderness again. The wilderness has chosen the new leader. The wilderness chose who fed us. It wasn't the brutality of survival. It was the wilderness. So, she's implying that everyone should put their trust back into that mystical deity being. Again, I am not saying she is contradicting Van intentionally in this moment, but that is what is happening. That is what is literally happening. When Lottie says that the wilderness has already chosen the leader, I thought this was such a nice little detail. Ty and Misty each sit up a little, straighten their backs up, like they're about to be chosen. And then Lottie says, Natalie, which I thought was spectacular. Jump back to 2021, and we're going to be taking a good hard look at poor Lottie's madness right now. Before, the actress playing adult Lottie did a really good job not giving a ton away around whether Lottie was experiencing delusion or not. Often it was really hard to tell. But when we cut back to Lottie in this moment, it is very clear that Lottie is unwell. Lottie is pleading her case to the women about how the wilderness is real and how they must see it. She's bringing up examples of their recent erratic behavior again. But for the most part, everyone is really quiet, which speaks volumes. And they're just tending to Lottie's gunshot wound. Lottie does make one really good point right here, because she says, Van, I saw it in your eyes just then. I did. And you know what? I'm with you, Lottie. Van was all in. She was. I'm with you on that one, Lottie. I'm not with you on much right now. I'm with you on that. Okay. Natalie is visibly struggling right here. She's shuffling from one foot to the other. And when Lottie gets to her and her little Wizard of Oz speech, she says, it was in you, Nat. It was in you, even when you denied it, especially then. You were always its favorite. Natalie cannot handle that, and she screams, why can't you ever stop? And in this, we're having flashbacks to when adult Natalie was on the brink of unaliving herself, and a scene of teenage Natalie in the dark holding a knife out in front of her, which to my knowledge we have not seen in the series yet, so that is to come. All of a sudden, Lisa comes out of nowhere pointing Natalie's rifle at Natalie, because it very much looks like Natalie is about to hurt Lottie, and Lisa can tell that Lottie is already hurt. This doesn't look good. If you're a cult member and you come up on this, your cult leader looks like she's in duress. Lisa looks terrified and completely ill-equipped to be holding this rifle. I mean, Callie looks more natural holding that gun that she got out of her dad's glove box than poor Lisa looks holding this thing. She does not look ready. We jump back to 1996, and Lottie explains that Natalie is chosen because it's the only way to explain what happened to Javi. She says, we tried to kill you and it wouldn't let us. This is definitely pointing at what happens next with adult Natalie. The wilderness, is now going to let Natalie pass. Lottie kisses Natalie's hand, and we see Coach Ben standing outside like a weirdo crying because of what he's about to do. Don't get me started. All of the other girls stand and pay respect to Natalie. Everyone does something different. And it is completely adorable because Natalie is so freaking cute and she doesn't want this. She's not like enjoying this power of the moment. It's so sweet and so cute because Natalie seems genuinely touched by what everyone's doing. She's crying and acknowledging the weight of the moment. And then Travis, his gesture is to take Natalie's hand and put it on his chest. And then he takes a really deep breath so that she can feel it. It was so cute. It was such a little thing. I never thought I would find something like that so adorable, but it got me right in the feels. I loved that moment. Shauna, I believe, is the last one to pay tribute to Natalie in some way. And I just wanted to take a minute to worry about Teen Shauna. Is anyone else worried about Teen Shauna? I'm freaking out. Teen Shauna is not okay. She was almost completely silent this entire episode, mostly communicating with looks, like looking at someone a certain way. This poor freaking girl, guys. Okay, let's go through it. 1, she is still postpartum, which is absolutely no joke. That is a real thing that she is experiencing all on her own as a teenager. 2, the child that she is postpartum with is dead. I can't. No. 3, she had a near-death experience where she imagined living entire days with that child not being deceased, with that child surviving that horrific birth, to then only wake up and learn of its death. Okay. 4, she's actively starving, which so is everyone else, but it needs to be added to the list. 5, the rest of the group acts like she is the only one who can butcher, forcing Shauna to actually be the one to kill Javi. Yes, I know he is technically dead because he froze to death. Do not come at me telling me he drowned. That is not what drowning looks like, and that is not how long drowning takes. That poor kid froze to death. But she's the one who actually has to give him the life-ending injury and then also cut up his entire body by herself. I'm worried about, this is not okay. All right, jump to 2021, I guess. Lisa is still pointing the rifle at Natalie and questioning her. Natalie is holding up a knife toward Lisa, like that is going to do anything to a rifle. This is weird, honestly. It's not the smartest idea. I am honestly not sure why they had her do that, but the important thing that's happening here is that Misty has pulled out a syringe from her pocket. Natalie drops the knife, has her hands up, and Misty rushes at Lisa. Natalie sees what's happening, and her instinct is to protect Lisa in ways that she couldn't protect other people in the wilderness. We see flashes of teen Natalie pulling the queen card, Javi falling through the ice, teen Natalie blaming herself for Javi's death to Coach Ben, and then teen Natalie at the bonfire the night before the plane crash when she was on acid and she hallucinates Misty looking confused and coming out of the woods. There's a lot to analyze there, and I think I'm going to make a whole separate video on that. But chaos ensues in the present day. Natalie jumps in front of Lisa. Misty stabs Natalie with the syringe right in the chest. The implication being maybe even directly into her heart. And Misty is horrified. As Natalie is passing, she has visions of being on the plane. at first by herself, and we come back to reality and see everyone freaking out, except Lisa, who is nowhere to be seen for the entire rest of the episode. Where did Lisa go? I'm bothered. If that is something that happened because of like actor availability, it's the only time I've ever been like, that's a pretty big plot hole right there. I'm bothered by that. I do not appreciate that at all. Even in the scene, and I will post it perhaps as like the thumbnail for this video, but even in the scene directly following like Natalie falling to the ground, we are still in the woods. There was just a rifle held by Lisa pointed at Natalie. Lisa is gone. I'm not okay with that. So I'm going to be researching that as soon as I'm done with this. Callie is sobbing. Natalie falls to the ground. Misty says there's nothing they can do. It's too late. And adult Natalie is back to the plane. There's a bright light. And we have Javi, who says there's nothing to be afraid of, you know? And Natalie says, no, I'm not supposed to be here. Teen Natalie shows up on her other side and says, we both know that's not true. This is exactly where we belong. We've been here for years. Now, there's a lot of people, I'm assuming, who are going to freak out and say that that is because everyone on the plane has been dead all along and that this is just Lost Part 2. No, guys, calm down. That can't be right. I'm refusing to believe that. I will not believe that. Adult Natalie on the plane starts to cry, and teen Lottie appears where Javi once was and puts her hand on Natalie's chest the same exact way that Travis did when he was acknowledging Natalie as the leader. Teen Lottie says, Natalie, it's not evil, just hungry like us. Just let it in. And adult Natalie grabs teen Lottie's hand on her chest and takes a deep labored breath. And I am assuming experiences death, which is very scary. Okay. Obviously, this death points a little bit back to the personified wilderness being some sort of deity that has control over these people, even in death. I'm not going to argue one way or the other on this because the writers want it left right here with the information that we currently have. It's something that they're obviously going to explore more in the upcoming seasons. It absolutely breaks my heart that Natalie experienced so much fear right before in death, actively dying. If I could change the world, like one thing about the world, I would probably make it so that everyone has a peaceful death. It's just something that really stresses me out. I'm glad that she saw Javi and that she saw her teen self, because I do think adult Natalie loves teen Natalie, loves that girl, and really wants to protect Lisa in ways that she couldn't protect her teen self. It made me really sad for her that she didn't see Travis. I know that we saw Travis's autopsy photos in season 1. And if we hadn't, I would probably be saying that he was alive, specifically because Natalie did not see him while she was dying. I'm just saying. That is what I would say if I thought that. Seeing teen Lottie was interesting. I know there's a theory that adult Lottie isn't actually Lottie and that it's actually adult Mari. I never bought that theory, But if I did, I would point to this moment. There's not a whole lot of reason that Natalie would see Teen Lottie other than the fact that the girls saw her as some kind of guru. But we just spent this whole episode establishing the fact that Lottie is no longer the leader. We don't see Lottie lead in any way, shape, or form except to announce that Natalie is the one who should lead them. I'm going to make a separate video on Juliette Lewis, possibly having left the show early, and this maybe not being what the creators originally wanted for Natalie. So I'm not going to get into all of that right now. But at the end of the day, this death is incredibly tragic. And Natalie is a character that I've just always hurt for. She, in my opinion, is one of the most relatable characters. I think she's just incredibly sympathetic. I know that there is a lot of controversy around her drug addiction. And I understand that. I don't want to invalidate anyone's feelings around a character experiencing addiction. I just think personally, from knowing people who have suffered from addiction, it would take any one of these traumas, like anyone with one of these traumas. And Natalie has experienced so much that it does not surprise me that she self-medicated the way that she did. Okay. Jumping sideways a bit, all of the worlds are converging. All of the 2021 worlds are converging right now. The police arriving on the scene attribute Natalie's death to a drug overdose, which is technically true. Frankly, there's a lot of unanswered questions here about the logistics of what the police would and wouldn't accept as answers from the rest of the women. And I'm going to hold off on that until we get season 3 and see if we get some answers. We see Callie and Shauna while Lottie is being led over to medical attention, and Lottie is still just staring with an insane look at Callie. Like, if somebody stared at me the way that Lottie is staring at Callie, I would need to leave that location immediately. Walter runs up to Misty, happy as a clam, and says, "I've taken care of the Adam Martin situation. You and your friends will be safe now." Misty says, "Walter, I killed my best friend." This is the second time in one season that we've seen Misty accidentally kill someone that she considered to be her best friend. This is going to bring up a lot of trauma for her. We've already seen her kind of shut down things that remind her of what happened with Crystal. So I can only imagine how triggering this must be for her. We see Creepy Cop talking to the other police officers. We're led to believe that he's taken Walter's deal and chosen to be the hero in the situation. I do find it hard to believe that we have an overdose resulting in death, a gunshot wound on a person who is experiencing a psychiatric emergency, and a murdered police officer with 3 gunshot wounds, and the police are just like, "Oh man, this is a crazy night." I find that hard to believe. Again, I will be waiting for season 3 to see how this is actually handled, because I don't buy at all that the local police would just be like, "Yeah, that's just a normal Friday night in the town." Taissa tells Lottie that she's going back to the hospital, but promises that her and Van are going to come check on her. And Lottie says, "We gave it what it wanted. It is pleased with us. You'll see." And Van looks absolutely horrified, which is really frustrating because she seemed to freaking be all about it an hour ago. There's a very long shot of Shauna looking at Callie and we're supposed to be thinking about traumatic cycles and how hurt people. Harken back to Shauna saying that she tried to always be distant from Callie because she didn't want to hurt her. And here we are. Callie just experienced a lot of trauma. We have our final cut back to 1996. Shauna is in the attic writing in her journal. There are some things that we can gather from it. I saw the lines, "How could it not have been me? I used to think it was Jackie who made me feel invisible, but..." And then she hears the crackling. And she screams down to the others to wake up, grabs her journals and her backpack, and then she runs back for Jackie's dress, which was such a nice little detail I appreciated. When she gets downstairs and wakes everyone up, we see that the cabin is on fire from the outside. And we know that Coach Ben did this. And he's also managed to get every exit either locked or in some way shut so that they cannot get these doors open. They are trapped inside. They break the door down, and I am honestly amazed at how these girls handle this emergency. They are so fast and so resourceful. They manage to get a lot of stuff out of that cabin. Again, they are going to be pretty screwed without this cabin. But I was impressed at how much they were able to get out. So screw you, Coach Ben. You thought you could hold teenage girls down, and you couldn't once again. They're all huddled and sobbing, and there's like close-ups on many of them. And Natalie goes from crying to this look of sheer anger because she knows who did this, and she is pissed. Maybe I'll use that picture as the thumbnail. We'll see. And that is how season 2 concludes. Coach Ben is the villain. I always knew that he was. And I just wanted to end this by saying, pay the writers. Pay the writers. Love the writers. Pay the writers. Like and subscribe. Love you guys.